the German immersion, going through children learning to read and write in both languages. It's been a great and challenging experience. And so I want to just let you know that. And here you can see these are not exactly my cats, but they are what they look like. So, all right, here's my agenda for this evening. I want to talk about a framework for literacy. I want to cover phonics, which I really feel like is the backbone for learning to read and spell. We're going to talk about sight words. What are they? Why are they called sight words? Why do we need to learn them? How you can work on learning them with your child. I'm going to talk about the importance of phonological awareness, what it is. Some of you might have watched some of the phonological awareness videos that I had recorded for Kinder. I want to talk about what your early readers should be reading. It's so perplexing to know what to choose for them. So I want to talk about a couple of different kinds of books, when they're appropriate, what they look like. This always comes up. Parents want to know when they should be concerned about their child and their child's progress. So we'll talk a little bit about just kind of some of the red flags or warning signs. And then we'll have time for questions. If something does come up during this and you need to put something in the chat box, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, I will definitely have time for question and answer at the end. All right, so let's start here with the literacy framework. And when I think about reading, and I'd like you actually to just take a minute and kind of reflect back on your own learning to read, especially if you learned to read in a language other than English, and then had to learn English. Kind of think about what that was like for you. We tend to have this idea that learning to read is this natural thing and everyone just does it, and it's just normal. And really, if you think about it, the need to read has only been around as long as the need to write, and that's only been around for about 5,000 years. So in terms of humans' brain development, learning to read is this really new add-on that we've had to adapt. Other skills like the ability to move our eyes and track prey has had to be adapted to move across the page. Right? So this is a really new thing that our brains have had to do. If you are a great reader, that's wonderful, but it doesn't mean that your child is going to be a great reader. However, if you struggle to learn to read or your spouse struggled to learn to read, there is a chance that your child will inherit that. Learning difficulties are inherited. Learning ability is not. So let's take a look right here at this framework. So when I think about all of the pieces about reading, if a teacher comes to me and says, oh, this child, I'm concerned they're having difficulty reading, I immediately start thinking, okay, well, why? Above everything is motivation. Are they motivated to read? Do they get pleasure from it? Is it meaningful to them? Do they have a purpose for reading? Now, for our little guys, for kinder and first, they're motivated. They want to learn to read. This becomes more of a concern for older kids if they haven't experienced success, right? But kids don't want to read if they're not motivated. So that's above everything. And then we look here, we've got kind of the two sides of this. We have the decoding and coding side, which is the reading and the spelling. And then we have the comprehension piece. We are going to be focused here on this part of it. Tonight, we're really going to talk about word recognition and spelling strategies, talk about print concepts, phonological awareness, the crucial importance of phonics and sight words. And our goal for our kiddos is to learn their phonics and learn those sight words so that they become automatic readers, so that they have enough fluency, which means they can read quickly enough and with expression to demonstrate their understanding. Because if you can read quickly and accurately, and if it sounds like you're talking, then you are understanding. And really, the whole goal of reading is for comprehension. We read to understand, to make meaning, right? And included in all of that are things like background information, your vocabulary, understanding how the piece of text that you're reading is structured. Are you monitoring your own comprehension when you're reading? Okay? Do you have the ability to take what you've read and pull it apart and reorganize it in a way to demonstrate your understanding? So look at all of the things here that go in to being able to read and to be a successful reader. Okay? Some of these pieces here are things that you are doing for your child at home. And I really want to say, and I can't emphasize it enough, the most important thing you do is read to and with your kids. And it doesn't matter what language you do it in. If you read in Spanish, fantastic. If you read in German, fantastic. If you read in Russian, fantastic. Whatever the language of the home is, read in that language to them. And also read in English, because that is our reading, that's our language of instruction here. But read to your child and read things to them that they cannot read themselves. That's how they're going to gain their background knowledge and their vocabulary. And they're going to gain understanding about how different things are organized. Something that you read to get information from is something very different than a story. Have them read the grocery list with you. Have them look at magazines. Have them read the mail. There's all different kinds of reading. That's so important. The number one thing for you to do in terms of helping your child be a good reader is to read to them and with them. All right, so we're going to be focusing over here. And let's think a little bit about why English is so challenging to learn. Usually at this point, I ask how many people are not native English speakers. I'm guessing that's true for some of you, that you are not native English speakers, that you had to learn to read and write in English. And so you have a good understanding of how difficult English is to learn. One of the main reasons is that England and the British Isles, being islands, they were open to invaders and conquerors. So everybody that came and conquered over the last 1,000 years, 1,500 years, left language and spelling behind. So I found this statistic here: about 26% of English vocabulary is Germanic, which actually is great for our school. Our kids who are German speakers actually do really well, because a lot of that German got translated into English in terms of the spelling and how things are structured. About 30% is French, and another 30% is Latin. What's not in here is Spanish, and we actually do have a lot of Spanish words in our language as well. So English has 26 letters, but there are 43 or 44, kind of depending upon what you read, sounds. Okay. Other languages that are easier to learn to read have a much more direct correspondence. Spanish is easier to learn to read because what you see is what you get for the most part. Okay, not true for English, and we'll talk about that. Old ways of pronouncing words have disappeared from English, but the spelling patterns remain the same. So this digraph, WH, we teach it when we teach SH and CH, and TH, we teach WH. But really, how would you make that sound? Think of a word that starts with WH. So it used to be very windy. We would say what, when, where. We don't do that anymore. We say what, when, where, why. And then we wonder why our children spell when, W-E-N. Well, duh, that's exactly how it sounds, right? So we've held on to that spelling, but we no longer pronounce it that way. Another thing about English, it's full of idioms. Expressions like sit tight or hit the roof. If you tell a child to sit tight and they know what sit means and they know what tight means, how does that make sense, right? So English is full of that. All right, I'm going to, go back to, got a link. Now, you're actually lucky, because normally I make the parents read this out loud to me. I'm going to have to kind of scroll through here. So I'm going to give you a minute to read this to yourself, and then I guess I'll have to read it out loud to myself. Go ahead and read through this. All right, that's a good one. Good example of why English is so difficult. I'll go ahead and read this to you just in case you weren't sure of all of it. It's really fun to read it out loud. It is. If we ever get to do this in person again, I'm definitely going to make the parents read it out loud. All right, here we go. It's called Brush Up Your English. I actually had thought this was attributed to Mark Twain, but I was looking it up last night and I did not find proof of that. In fact, I'm not sure who wrote this. I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough. Others may stumble, but not you, on hiccup, thorough, slew, and through. Well done. And now you wish, perhaps, to learn of less familiar traps? Beware of herd, a dreadful word, that looks like beard and sounds like bird. And dead, it's said like bed, not bead. For goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt. A moth is not a moth in mother, nor both in bother, broth in brother. And here is not a match for there, nor dear and fear for bear and pear. And then there's dose and rose and lose, just look them up, and goose and choose, and cork and work and card and ward, and font and front and word and sword, and do and go and port and cart. Come, I've hardly made a start. A dreadful language? Why, man alive, I'd learned to speak it when I was 5. All right, so now I just think this does a great example of explaining why English is so hard for our kiddos to learn to read and write. Okay, so again, here's another thing that I would have you do out loud with me if we were together, but we are not. I apologize for kind of the poor quality of this. I wasn't able to find a better way to get it in there. But what I like to do is have you parents tell me the sounds that these letters make. These are the common and regular sounds and spellings for 43 sounds for our 26 letters. If you have a piece of paper or Post-it, you might want to take a note just on some of these. Again, you will have links to the slides, so you should be able to print this out if you want to. Really crucial to know that when we make the sounds, it's very important not to distort them and put a "b" after it. This letter does not say "b," it says "b." Right? If we say "b," it's going to be difficult for the children to blend. If they see the letters C-A-T and they say "ka-ata," and they try to put that together, they're going to end up with a "ka-ata," which is not the word cat. All right, B says, please do this with me in the privacy of your own home. Please make the sounds. B says B. C, K, and CK at the end all say K. K. D says D. F and PH say F. G says G. H doesn't actually say anything. It's a breath. Sometimes we call it the bad breath sound because it's like when you're checking to see if your breath is bad. The thing about H is it takes on the sound of whatever vowel follows it. Hat, him, right? It's just a breath sound. All right, this one was tricky for me to figure out what the pattern was. So J and DGE at the end of a word, and G, E, G, I, and G, Y all say J. So G is actually really tricky, and it's tricky for the kids to learn it because most of our letters, when you say the name of the letter, you make the sound D, B, right? But G, then we say, oh no, G says G. Where does that come from? Well, it is here, right? It does say J. It does say like G in gentle and giant and gymnastics, right? L says ooh, right? When the kids have trouble, we tell them to put their tongue ooh, roof of their mouth. This is one of the first sounds we do with kids because it's easy to make. It's one of the first sounds actually that a lot of human children make. Babies make that sound. Okay, and it's a good one. We can hold it, we can stretch it out, which makes it easier to blend. Okay, N and KN at the beginning of a word, and this actually comes from German, says if children are having trouble distinguishing between these two, you cannot make the sound if you hold your nose. Try it. Can't do it, right? Need to have your nose open. So sometimes that helps kiddos. Okay, P, this is also just a puff of air. It's not puh. QU, this is a tricky one. Q is never in English without the U. They are together. Okay? We don't want to say qua because it's not qua-ik, qua-in. It's more of a coo sound, like what a dove makes, coo. If you do that with your mouth, and if you have a mirror handy, this is actually, it's good. So you can see what you're doing. Coo, say quick, queen, quiet. See how my mouth closes rather than qua. It's not qua. Fortunately, in English, not a lot of words that start with QU. Okay, R and also WR. This is also a tricky thing. It's not ra and it's not is spelled by E-R-I-R-U-R. Okay, it's not Someone's name is not Robert. It's Robert. It's another kind of closed Robert. Robbie, rabbit, rather than saying S, also C-E, C-I, and C-Y make the S sound. You'll notice the connection here, this letter, C, here we can hear the S sound. So there's a connection here between these and these, right? It's the E, I, and Y, center, city, cycle. T, t, not ta, t, V, v, W. Another tricky one. Say the name of the letter. W. So what sound do you think kids want to say? D, W. Nope. Okay. We don't want to say wa. So you again want to think about kind of closing your mouth and think about the word woo, which is that old-fashioned word for romancing someone. Wednesday, water, wet. Okay, not wa, but woo. X is the only letter that actually has two phonemes, two sounds. We say ks. It's like a K and an S together. Ks. And this is at the end of a word. At the beginning of a word, X says Z, like Xerox or Xavier. Y is probably the most difficult letter we have in English. At the beginning of a word only, it makes a consonant sound. It's not ya. What sound do you think the kids want to make when they see the letter is Y? They all want to say like W. We have to say nope. Y says ye, like hear ye, yesterday, yummy, yucky, not ya. E, Z and S at the end of a word says Z. Think about the word glasses. There you can hear the S making the Z sound. All right, digraphs. Sometimes we call these the H brothers. SH, shh, WH. We no longer say wh, it's just plain old wh. CH and TCH both say ch. If kids are having a hard time with that, have them put their hand up in front of their face and pretend to sneeze. Chew. You should feel it hit your hand. Ch. When you do shh, it doesn't feel the same. TH makes two sounds. The voiced sound, and you can tell, you can put your hand on your throat. You have to stick your tongue out. Many children struggle to make the TH sound. Developmentally, that's okay. This is not a sound that we really expect them to have mastered until they are 7. So don't worry if your kindergartner is saying dis and d's and does. It's okay. You can let them know it's actually a th, and they like to stick their tongue out, so you can have them practice this, these. Okay, so you can feel the vibration. The other th tends to be more at the end of a word. It's unvoiced. Bath, with, also thin, think. Right, so that's unvoiced. This is a funny one, only at the end of a word. Can't say it if you pinch your nose. Think song, ring, long. And ph, we already said, makes the f sound. Okay, inflectional endings. Ing is an easy one. It says ing. Ed, on the other hand, fun thing about English, it makes 3 different sounds. And the sound it makes depends on the final consonant of the verb that it's on. So if the final consonant is a T or a D, like stand or plant, we have to put a little vowel sound in there. So we say planted. Okay, we wouldn't say standed. How about start? We would say started, planted, started. If the final consonant is unvoiced, if it's not a sound that vibrates, like sh or ch or p or f, we say t, kicked, pushed, jumped. And if it's anything else, if it's a consonant that does vibrate, then we say d, rolled, planned. Fortunately, most kids just kind of hear this and know, but it's very common for students who are English learners, not native speakers, to kind of put id on the end of everything. Looked it, liked it. Okay, so that's what this means. This is just the plural s spelled that way. All right, let's go into the fun part, which is the vowels, because the consonants are pretty straightforward, but vowels, it's a whole lot of something. All right, so what does short A say? Ah. Really important to be very clear on the differences. Ah, like at. Short E says eh, like edge. I'm going to show you a graphic on the next slide that will help you remember this. Edge. Short I says I, in. Short O says ah. Short U says kind of like if somebody poked you in the stomach. However, in English, all of our vowels can make the sound. It's called the schwa. It's important to know we call it the lazy schwa because is the easiest sound for us to make. And so if you think about 2-syllable words, think about some words that start with the letter A, like about, again, away. We don't say a way or a way. We say okay. So fortunately, kindergartners don't have to worry about the schwa very much, but this is something that's going to come up in 1st and 2nd grade. So here's our short vowels. R controlled, that's where the R changes the sound of the vowel. So AR says R. All 3 of these say the same thing. They say and OR says or. All right. Now, getting down into the long vowels, we spent all this time convincing the kids, oh, you have to learn all these short vowel sounds, and we practice and practice and practice and practice, and then they get it, and we go, yay! Okay, now long vowels. Guess what? They make another sound. So we have what we call final E, or magic E, or silent E, kind of depending. And here's where the E at the end changes the sound from A to A, E, I, O, U. Okay? This is a 1st grade skill. Working on these long vowels is the 1st grade skill. Okay, LVD just means long vowel digraph. So here's the other ways we have of spelling that long A sound. If it's in the middle of a word or a syllable, we spell it with an AI. If it's at the end, we spell it with an AY. Okay? This is the same thing if you look over here, the oys. It's the same thing. That's the middle of the word. That's the end of the word. It's positional. We also can make the long A sound at the end of an open syllable, like table. Okay. Here's long E, also spelled EE and EA, and E at the end of a syllable like be or he or we or she. IGH, this one's so tricky. Kids really struggle with this. Long I like silent. Here's long O. We have OA, and then we have OW. This tends to be at the end of a syllable. Of course, we also have OW over here as well, where it says ow. English, gotta love it. Okay, long O at the end of an open syllable like locate. And long U, here U blank E like cute. Also EW like few. And here's long U like music. Once we get over here to the other vowel digraphs, it's really difficult. Here's our oohs and our oys and our ows and our ahs. And of course, in German, AU says ow instead of OU. So you can betcha kids get confused on this. It's okay. They tend to get it straightened out by the time they're in 3rd and 4th grade, but this is confusing while they're learning it. So there's your English phonics in a nutshell. Hope you're all now experts. So let's go back in here. This is a phonics chart for zoophonics, which is what our kinder and 1st grade classroom teachers are using. Hopefully you are familiar with this. These animals have names to help the kids remember. So this is Allie, alligator, Ellie, elephant, Innie, inchworm, Queenie, quail. Hopefully you have access to this and the students are practicing it. There should be resources on your teacher's websites to help learn this. It's also good for you too, just to know now really what these sounds are. All right. So this is what I was telling you about. Here is another, just kind of a little reminder. This is something that we use when we're in the classroom, and it's something you can actually do with the kids. It's fun for them to practice, as long as you don't mind them standing on a chair. But we say A is for at the chair. The cat is at the chair. Short E is what sound again? Eh, edge of the chair. Short I is I, in the chair. So we tell the kids to sit in the chair. Ah, on the chair. I let them stand on the chair in the classroom. And is for under the chair, which of course is their very favorite one to do. So if you feel brave, you can do this with your child, and once they know what it is, you can really test them. You can say, all right, I'm going to say a sound. I want you to get in the position, eh. And hopefully they'll get in the chair, they'll put the bottom in the chair, or and they'll go under the chair. So just another way to kind of help learn these sounds. And here's just another reminder for the long vowel sounds as well. This is how we have them up in our classrooms so that the students have a reference. So this is cake, tree, kite, bone, and mule, just to help remember. All right, so let's take a look at this and see what are your kiddos expected to do and when are they expected to do it. All right, so print concepts level, this is when kids come into kindergarten. They know things like the book title, they are learning top to bottom, left to right, and really they are learning the alphabet letter names, both upper and lowercase. So that's pre-K to the first half of kinder. We really want the kids to know that, to know those names, so that they can move into the next level, the alphabetic level. Here's where they're learning the sounds that go with the names. So they need to know the consonant sounds, the short vowel sounds. They need to be able to start blending those together. CVC just stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. You cannot write a word in English without a vowel. Okay, so there's an example. At, right? Consonant, vowel, consonant. We also want the kids to be able to take a whole word and pull it apart. So if they hear the word run, we want them to be able to say n. So they need to be able to blend, they need to be able to segment, they need to be able to read and spell these, and they need to read and spell sight words. This is what, if they're not already working on this in kindergarten, they will be. This is really the second half of kinder to the first half of first grade. And then that continues on Okay, so in first grade, once they're doing that, then they move into working on consonant blends, which is just two consonants together. They work on those digraphs. They make that big jump now from short vowels to long vowels. They learn not only final E, but they learn the digraphs or the pairs. They learn the R controlled. They start talking about those inflected endings, ED and ING, and they add in some more sight words. So this is first grade and continuing on into second grade. And then really their last thing to do is to start working on polysyllabic words. They learn open and closed syllables. They learn consonant LE. They do prefixes and suffixes. They do Greek and Latin roots. This starts in second grade and continues on until mastered. Most students have this by the end of third grade. So this is just kind of a handy reference so you know where your students are. All right. So now that you have some kind of understanding about what the phonic sounds are, let's talk about sight words. Okay, what are they? You probably are familiar with the list. You know that your students should be practicing them, but what are they? So we've got two kinds of sight words. We have words that contain sound spellings that have not yet been taught. So starting in kinder, we teach some words that can be sounded out. We teach them as sight words. We teach the word I. We teach the word see because EE, that's a first grade skill. We teach the word like because the same thing, that magic E, that doesn't happen until first grade. We teach the word can, even though you can sound can out. Students need to recognize that so they can start doing some just simple pattern sentences. I like the cat. I like the dog. I can walk. I can talk. I can read. Right, so even before they are ready to sound those out, we teach those as sight words. We don't do a lot of those, so this is not very common. What is much more common and what we're going to focus our attention on are irregularly spelled words that don't follow the sound spelling cards. Whatever sound spelling card system is being used, these are words that don't fit that pattern. So here's an example. Was. If you were going to sound was out, you would say ass, was. That's not what it sounds like. It sounds like was. Or how about this word? What should this say? If it was regular, it should say own. If you put a B in front of it, it says bone. That's a regular word. But the way we read this word is one. So it's irregular. So a sight word is really a word that has to be memorized because children can't sound it out. It doesn't follow the rules. Sometimes we call it a rule breaker. You might hear that. All right, so let's try. Here's our first word. I want you to tell me, is this word a decodable word? Can we sound it out? Does it do what it's supposed to do? Or is it irregular? If we were together, I would have you show me. I'm actually going to have you, I'm going to give you just a minute or two. If you would just, on a piece of paper or somewhere, just kind of go through this and decide for these 7 words, are they decodable? Can you sound them out? Or are they irregular? I'll give you 2 minutes to do that, and then I'll go through and we'll check it out. All right, just finish up the last 1 or 2. Okay, like, that's decodable. The E makes the I say I. Everything does what it should. So that is a decodable word. Of, it's irregular. How should of be spelled? If I was going to spell it, I would spell it with a U and a V. Of. Okay, kids really struggle with this one. This is a word that kids have to memorize. Okay, how about C? That's decodable. The S says what it's supposed to. EE says E. C. That is a decodable word. Play. That's also decodable. The PL say what they're supposed to. Pull. AY is the vowel team that says A. Everybody does what it should do. Okay, how about this one? Should. Completely irregular. Okay, OU should say ow. The L should say ul. This word should be showled. Showled. As it is, it rhymes with stood or hood. I would spell it with an OO. Come. Come looks regular. We have an E, we have an O. Everything looks great. But it's irregular because it should say comb like home, but it doesn't. And the last one, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's down there at the bottom of my screen. It's my. And it says it is decodable. Y at the end of a one-syllable word says I. We didn't actually cover that one on the phonics page, but that is a decodable word. I hope this makes it a little bit clearer about the difference between a regular word and a sight word and why we have to learn these. Children need to be automatic with their sight words so that when they're reading along, they don't stop and try to sound it out. If they stop and try to sound it out, they kind of lose the thread of what's going on, right? So in order for them to be automatic readers, we need them to just learn their sight words. All right, so what are some ways that you can practice sight words? There's all kinds of ways. Some of my favorite things to do, I really like hands-on for kids. This is something that I used to do when I was in the classroom. It's really fun. It's great too if your tables are dirty. Find some shaving cream that you like the smell of. And if you put it down on your tabletop, or you can put it on a cookie tray if you don't want to get it on your table or countertop, put the shaving cream down, let the kids swirl it all around, spread it all out, and then dictate a sight word to them. All right, I want you to write the word see. You have them write the word see in the shaving cream. Okay, erase it. Now write the word like and have them practice. You also can do this with chocolate pudding. This one's really fun. I would do it on a plate, and then when they're done, as long as their hands were clean, they get to lick the plate. You can fill a pan or a tray or a cookie sheet with rice or with lentils or small beans or sand or salt, although salt goes everywhere. I can just tell you from experience, salt goes everywhere. But if you put a tray with something like that, then that's another great way for kids to practice. That tactile input on their fingers is really helpful, along with the body movements. You can do this for practicing letter names and sounds. You can say, all right, I'm going to say a sound. I want you to write the letter. I'm still doing this with the first graders that are working with me online. So say a sound, have them write the letter. Say the letter, have them write it and tell you the sound. Right? Sandpaper also is something good that you can do to have the kids, if they don't mind the feeling of it, they can write on sandpaper. You can crinkle up tin foil, crumple it up until it's all kind of wrinkly, and they can practice writing on that. If you have sidewalk chalk available, that's a great way to practice sight words. You can write the words on the sidewalk, and then the kids have to say them and hop on them and see how far they can go. If you happen to have some Post-its around, oh my gosh, kids love Post-its so very much. Even my 16-year-old still loves Post-its. So this is a really fun thing to do, whatever the words are that they're working on, and maybe just pick 2 or 3 that they're really struggling with. Write it on a bunch of Post-its and put them around the house, and then they have to go on a Post-it hunt. And they have to find that word, and every time they find that word, they have to slap it and say it, and then they can keep it. One parent said her child was really struggling to learn a word, and so she put it on the refrigerator door and the bathroom door and on the cupboard, and they couldn't use the bathroom or open the refrigerator or open the cupboard until they read the word, which I don't know if you want to do that, but I thought that was pretty clever if the child was really struggling. Something else that you can do is as they master the words, if you have a place where you can create kind of a wall of fame for your child and put up some type of little frame or border or something, and every time they learn a word, they master it, that post-it gets to go on the wall. And then they get to see their progress, which for kids that are struggling is so encouraging when they can see what they've mastered. So if you can spare a pack of post-its, you will have endless fun practicing with that. I've got other ideas here. You can put the words on cards and do flashcards. You can play memory. I love this one. It says hang up 2 sight words and race your child across the room to read the sight word in your lane. You can put the cards down and they have to read them as they go by. Hide them around the house. You can play war. You can make bingo. You can play go fish, make a tic-tac board. I thought this was really cool. Tape the words on the ceiling and turn off the lights, and then grab a flashlight. Kids love flashlights. And whatever word the flashlight shines on, they have to read. You can make the words using Play-Doh, using, if you get alphabet cookie cutters, which you can find, I think, like at the dollar store. Boy, you can have a lot of fun with Play-Doh. You can make cookies. You can find alphabet pasta, alphabet cereal. Have fun with it. You can use M&Ms, and they can make the letters out of M&Ms, and then when they're done, they can eat the M&Ms. Perhaps I'm a little food driven, but as long as it's fun. The main idea here is that sight words have to be learned automatically, and it takes repetition. Some kids can learn them with just practicing a couple times. Other kids need practice and practice and practice. And the more ways you can find to do that, the more kinds of input you can offer, the better for your child. And you can have fun doing it too. Practice in the car, practice it in the bathtub. You can buy soap crayons. They can write on the bathroom wall. I had something else. I'll share it. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that you can actually see me. I have a little tub here. It's a little plastic tub. This is a fancy pants one, but you don't have to have a fancy pants one. And if you can't see me, I'm just holding up like a clear plastic tub with a lid, and it has the letter M on it. And inside the tub are objects that start with the letter M, with the sound. So this is a great way, not necessarily to practice sight words, but to practice sounds. There's a little mug. There's a man. There's a monkey. There's a magnifying glass. This is something you could put together for your child with a lot of things you'd probably just find in the junk drawer. Or you can have your child create sound tubs, especially if there are sounds that your child is struggling with. Find a magazine, have them cut out pictures of things that start with that sound, and put together a sound tub. Kids love this. The older kids, when I'm in the classroom, the kids who are way beyond learning their letter names and sounds still want to play with my sound tubs. So that's another fun way to practice. And I wanted to show another thing to practice. And again, I'm hoping that you can see this. This is called a whisper phone. It is 3 pieces of PVC pipe. It's a straight piece and 2 elbows. And when you put it on, it makes this really cool phone. And then the kids put it, I can't do it because of my headphones, but the kids put it to their ear and their mouth. And then if they whisper into it, they can hear themselves. And they love it. And they love to practice reading with the whisper phones. And they can practice their sight words with the whisper phones. And the novelty of using this that you can put together, literally, I think for less than $1, will get them to do a lot of practice. So this is a great tool to have on hand for them to practice their sight words. Okay, so we have talked about our phonics sounds. We have talked about regular and irregular words and how we have to practice the irregular words. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about what is phonological awareness and why is it important. So perhaps you've noticed the cat pictures. These are not my actual cats, but they look very similar to my cats. I have 2 sets of sisters, a gray and white set and a tiger set. And so it's just kind of fun for me to have them in the picture. So, all right, if you look over here, you can see all of the things that fall under this umbrella of phonological awareness. It is the ability to hear and manipulate sounds. And it is an absolutely crucial skill for being able to read. Before kids can read, they have to be able to hear and manipulate sounds. Remember, our brains are wired to learn to talk. Unless there is some type of something within the wiring of the brain that's gone wrong, no matter what language you expose a baby to, they are going to learn that language. They're going to hear those sounds. They're going to start to mimic them. They're going to babble. They're going to start to say words, right? Our brains are hardwired for that. Not hardwired to read, but hardwired for that. So we want to take advantage of that. Here are all the things that fall under phonological awareness. The ability to hear syllables, right? To hear the individual syllables in words. We start off by clapping syllables and having them clap their names. Being able to hear alliteration, like Lizzie the lovely leopard leapt for lunch. All those words started with the l sound. That's alliteration. The ability to hear individual words in a sentence. The ability to hear individual sounds in a word, right? All of that is crucial for students to understand when they're reading. They need to know that words are made up of sounds and that sentences are made up of words, right? So here we're talking about blending syllables and segmenting syllables, hearing individual sounds and blending them and segmenting, being able to isolate sounds, substitute sounds, add sounds, take sounds away. All of this falls under phonological awareness. Okay, so here's a continuum of skills, just so you have sort of an idea. The easiest skill for most kids is rhyming. Cat, bat, mat, these are where the ending chunk is all the same. If you watched the videos that I posted, I really was focusing on that a lot in the beginning. I have found in my work with kids, students who struggle to hear rhyme, to be able to discriminate if it's rhyming or if it's not rhyming, and who struggle to produce rhymes tend to struggle to learn to read. So to me, this is kind of an important indicator skill, rhyming. Fortunately, it's an easy one for us to practice. Now, it may be that you need to do a little bit of practice with it. It's not something that all adults can do easily. My spouse cannot rhyme at all. But if you practice it, you will get better at it. And you can, there's all kinds of rhyming songs, nursery rhymes, rhyming stories. And it's something that you don't need a lot of preparation to do, right? You can just rhyme. The next skill, a little more difficult, is to be able to identify the first sound in a word and the last sound in a word. We're starting to talk about discrimination. If I say man, what's the first sound that you hear? Okay, so that's why some of the things I was having the kids practice on those videos. After they can identify the first sound, we move on to, can you hear the last sound? And then we move on to, can you hear the sound in the middle? Really getting kids to pay attention to that. All right, this leads into being able to blend sounds together. This is crucial for reading. They need to be able to say man and know that the word is man. Okay, so crucial for reading. Segmentation is where they take a whole word and they need to be able to hear the individual sounds. Well, this is what we do when we spell, right? So they need to know that man is made up of a, n, so that they can spell. And then down here at the bottom, it's manipulation. So if I asked you to change the first sound in man to p, the word would be pan. That is the most difficult skill to manipulate. Okay? So we are really, especially for kinder, really focusing on these right here. All right, so what can you do to support this? In the beginning, remember I said read to your kids. Sing rhyming songs if you can find them. YouTube is a great resource. There's all kinds of things on there for rhyming. Read rhyming stories. If you're a kinder parent, I shared a resource at the beginning of the year that has a number of rhyming stories listed, and you can go on, and I actually put links to YouTube videos so you can have those stories read out loud. Listen to music and clap to the beat. So much of our language is rhythmic, and if we can increase our children's awareness of that, that is going to help them. Clap out the syllables in names and words. So if you are grocery shopping and you see an avocado, let's clap it. Avocado. Cabbage. Telephone. It may be something you want to practice first, but that's a great thing that you can do with your child or while you're driving in the car. And that just leads into this play language games. You can practice, okay, I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me a word that rhymes. Cat. Fan. They would tell you a word that rhymes. Or say two words and ask if they rhyme. Does it rhyme? Doesn't it rhyme? Here's an example for how they can listen to blending. Say, it's time for lunch. What time is it? Time for lunch. So you're making the sounds and you're asking them to blend together. You can do the opposite. You can say, all right, I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me the sounds that you hear. We're going to have some ham. What do you hear? Three sounds. That's great. And then I linked on here on this slide. Whoops. Nope. Okay, well, it doesn't seem to be taking me to it. There's another resource on there for you to go and look at for things that you can do to practice. So we've talked about the sounds they need to know. We've talked about sight words. We've talked about phonemic awareness, segmenting and blending. How do we, as the teachers at AEA, know what your students can do? We actually assess these things. So in kinder, we have an alphabet, a letter recognition assessment that we do. We have a rhyming assessment. We have an oral blending and sound isolation assessment that we do. I'm not sure now, given the circumstances that we're in, how many of these assessments have been done this year. I know normally we do them. I'm not sure about the sound ones. We have a basic phonics spelling test, BPST. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what the S stands for. Sounds test, basic phonics sounds test. I've been doing this for so many years and I can't remember it. This is an assessment that we start in kindergarten and go all the way through third grade until kids have mastered all of those sounds. And it tests, does your student know the letter names, the letter sounds? Can they read CVC words? Can they read words with short vowels? Can they read words with long vowels? Can they read words with more than one syllable? This is something you can ask your child's teacher to show you if you haven't seen it. We do a sight words test. We have a couple of different ones that we use, but we do assess those sight words and high frequency words. To do automaticity and fluency, we listen to the students read a passage out loud. I just was doing that with some of my students today. They read and I listen and I take notes on what they say and what they do. So your child's teacher is gathering all this information on your student, and you should ask to see it and ask to know how they are doing. All right, let's talk about books. Now you have some idea about the background and the phonics. Where do we go from here, right? And this is always the hard piece because there isn't a lot out there for beginning readers to read that they can actually read. Of course, my cat says that you should be reading books about cats. So what should they read? Let's talk about a couple of different kinds of books that you might have seen. So before our kiddos know all of their letters and sounds, we want to start with predictable books. Okay, predictable books, they're a good place to start. They are repetitious and they use picture clues for the non-patterned words. These books are also good for practicing the first sight words as well. So here you can see the pattern. I see a cow. There's a picture if you didn't know what that word was. What is this? It's a pig. All right, this should be pig. I see a pig. I see a duck. I see a dog. And so on. So we are practicing directionality. You're practicing reading from left to right. You are practicing reading each word. That's what these dots are, so the child can touch. We want them to know that. We want them to understand that there are spaces between the words, right? That's how we write that. And then they're practicing. Can they read the word pig or cow if you were to just show them that word in isolation? Probably not at this point, because they're not yet in control of all the sounds blending. This is a good place to start. Here's another example. They will pump, they will ring, they will jump, they will shop. This one's a little bit more difficult, but it's still the same idea. This is a pattern reader. Okay, this gives our beginning readers a feeling of success. This is something that your kindergarten teachers have in the classroom. It's something that I have in the reading lab. It's also something that we have downloads that you can print out and practice with your child. Okay, so that's kind of the first place to start. This is them reading, not you reading to them so much, but them reading. All right, so once they've got a few of their short vowel and consonant sounds down, they are ready to begin reading decodable books. And we want to move out of those predictable books and into the decodable books, because here's where they're going to spend their time. We want them to be decoders. Almost all of the words should be able to be sounded out in a decodable word, in a decodable book. You're going to have some sight words, but we really want them to be decodable. Now, as you can imagine, when kids are at this stage, the books are not exactly scintillating, because there's not a lot you can do with short vowel words. And this is a classic example. The bat and a rat sat on a mat, right? The cat sat on a mat. The bat and a fat rat sat on a cat. The fat cat sat on a mat. This is deadly for us as adults to read and go through. However, for the kids, it's great because it forces them to go through, and we want them to be reading b, at, bat, and, a, at, fat. Once they're at the point where they can read this pretty easily, they are ready to move on, right? These are stages that they are going to go through. Here's another example. This one's a little more complex because you can see there's some blends. Slid, you have the sight word down, you have step, you have rock, looking at CK at the end, you have look. So this one is a little bit harder. Still decodable though. I don't think there's anything in here other than a few sight words like was. Look, we teach as a sight word. The is a sight word. Everything else is decodable. So we want to move out of the predictables and into the decodables as soon as possible. Once they have mastered those short vowels, they've got final E, and they've got some of the most common long vowels, and at least 30 of the sight words, they're ready to move on to easy readers. Okay, these are those I can read books, level 1 and level 2. They're a good place to start. And now you can see, just looking right here, right, you can see that they have to be able to read magic E, they need to know AY, they need to know ALL, or they need to know how and many. So even though this says my very first reader, and some of them say pre-K, if you're thinking about the language demands, this is really what we want them to have in place when we turn them loose to read this independently. Now, can you read this to them? Yes, absolutely. It's great to read it to them before they can read it to themselves. But once they've got these things here, short vowels finally, a couple of long vowels, and a good chunk of sight words, we want them to read this independently, and they're becoming independent readers at this point. Here's a word of warning. This can be so tricky. You're excited, your child is ready to start reading, you go to Target, you go to Costco, you're going to buy some books, and you see, oh, look, I can read level 1. Yeah, I'm going to buy a bunch of those. Just because it says level 1 or early reader does not mean it is at the reading level of a beginning reader. You have to be judicious. You need to take your new language eyes, now that you sort of think about that scope and sequence, about the grade levels and what they're learning, and look at the stories and decide whether your child can actually do that. Fancy Nancy is very popular. I love Fancy Nancy. The goal of Fancy Nancy is to teach vocabulary. And it is a wonderful story to read to your child. Look, here are some examples of the words that were in this particular story. Crestfallen, desperate, heroine, plume. I love it. That's fantastic. I would love it if our kiddos are exposed to these words. But am I going to expect my first grader to actually be able to read this? No. This is too difficult for most first graders, especially something to keep in mind for our school. our kids are only getting half the amount of instruction in English that they would be getting if they were at a non-immersion school. So we have to bear that in mind. Okay, our kiddos are learning English and German simultaneously. So by the time your child is in second grade, they've only had 1 year of instruction in English, half a year in kinder and half a year in first. And this is important to think about, because if you have nieces or nephews or other kiddos and you're looking at your child and you're looking at them, you can feel frustrated or concerned because your child is not reading where the other child is. Your child is learning to read and write in two languages simultaneously. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit longer, and that's okay. We know that. Okay, we know that. So for most of our first graders, this is going to be too difficult and will be discouraging. So just beware when you're looking for a book for your child to read, kind of think about where they are, think about what sounds they know, what sight words they know, and use that to kind of guide you. I have a bunch of books. I have a parent library at school that normally I would take you to at the end of the presentation and let you take books home. We can't do that right now. Hopefully when we get back to school, we can. But I do have some resources for you where you can find some of these predictable and decodable books. All right, so let's talk about warning signs when you should be concerned that your child is struggling with reading. So here are some common signs of a reading disability. And again, I'm just kind of going to remind you, think about your own history, your family's history. If there is a history of reading difficulties in your family, that's something to just be aware of and to watch for. It doesn't mean that your child is going to have it, but it means that we just need to watch, because there is a slightly greater likelihood that they might struggle. Okay, so here are some things to watch out for. Problems with understanding what is read. You read a story to your child, you ask them some questions about it, and they don't understand. Okay, they can't tell you what was happening. They aren't aware of the phonemes or the sounds that make up words, which shows itself as a difficulty with blending sounds to make words. So you might have seen it again. I'm hoping you can see me. I have my arm outstretched. We teach this kind of chop and mop, where we'll say the sounds and man. So I touched my arm as I made the sounds, and then I put my hand back up on my shoulder and I drew it down as I said man. So saying the sounds and blending them together. Children who really struggle to do that, who can look at a word and they struggle to recall the sounds and then put them together, they might say and mop. You know, they said a word and it has the same beginning sound, but they didn't get the other sounds. And that's a concern. That's something that we want to pay attention to and really work on with them. Okay. Difficulty with spelling correctly. We definitely notice this in older children as they are learning to write and to spell. This is a good indicator. They might even spell the same word differently within the same sentence. So they're writing and they have the word, let's say they have the word pet, and they write it P-E-T, P-I-T, P-T, P-T-E. They spell it differently each time. That would be something to bring up with your child's teacher. It goes along with difficulty with the order of letters in words. Remember when we talked about segmenting, children should be able to hear the whole word and then break it into the individual sounds. If a child struggles with that, that's something to be talked about with your child's teacher. Trouble rhyming words, I mentioned that already. Difficulty with pronouncing words if they reverse the sounds. If they have a delay in speaking as compared to their peers. So if a child is a really late talker, there is some research to indicate that having speech difficulty can lead to making it more difficult to learn to read. A delay in learning the alphabet, the numbers, the days of the week, months, color shapes, other basic information. And then if your child has difficulties understanding the subtleties of language, such as jokes or slang. These are indicators that we might need to meet or to talk about your child. If you have any concerns or if you have questions, certainly reach out to your child's teacher. Feel free to reach out to me as well, and we can talk about it. But these are some things to watch out for. All right, here is some great resources that I hope you will have a chance to check out. The Measured Mom is one of my favorite ones. She's a stay-at-home mom who is a reading specialist, and she's created an entire curriculum. Many of her resources are free. You just need to subscribe to her newsletter, and it only comes once a week. And then you have access to this huge library of resources, and all you need to have access to is a printer. And you can print them out, and there's all kinds of games and things that you can play. There's decodable books that you can print. There's predictable books that you can print, all kinds of things. Very helpful. Same for Carl's Corner. Starfall, you may be familiar with, is another website that has content that is free or low cost. It actually has wonderful books that you as parents can order and have sent home. I use all of them in the classroom with the students that I see in my reading groups. I really recommend them. And then here's another one, this Reading Mama. She actually works with the Measured Mom. And again, lots of great hands-on resources, games to play, sight words, all kinds of things. There's actually even math resources as well. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Okay, so I would encourage you to check these out. And that's it. I'm sorry to have talked at you for more than an hour, and sorry that we could not interact. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to either put them in the chat or to use the Q&A feature now. And for the few minutes that we have left, I will go ahead and address any of them. Take a minute and see if anyone has anything. Perhaps you can hear one of my cats is here at my feet yelling right now. Okay, let's see, I see one question. Okay, so here's a great question. Does the AEA library have book packs or groups of books to check out for kinder readers? You know, I don't know, unfortunately, now what Mrs. Gullins has or what her checkout system is. I have all of that available for you in my upstairs in the reading room. I'm not sure how to make that available. You know, perhaps if you would like to check out some predictable and some decodable books for me, if you can go ahead and I'm going to put my email in the chat here. Let's see if it's going to go in. If you want to go ahead and send me an email and let me know that you would like some books, I will do my best to get on campus this week and see if I can put some book bags together, and then you can come and pick them up. I can't promise that I can do that. My son is actually having surgery at some point this week, but if I can, I'm happy to do that. If not, I can take care of that after break, and I can put together some book bags for you that you can take home and read with your child. Are there any other comments? Questions? Or anything? If not, thank you so much for your time and for participating in this and for being concerned about your child's reading. Don't hesitate to reach out to me or to ask questions. And if you know of other parents that you think might be helped by this, please don't hesitate to refer them. I'm going to do this again in a month. Let's see, here's another question. Is there a particular order we should be teaching readers doing well? I'm not sure, Sasha, I understand your question. Oh, particularly teaching readers doing well. I do understand, I'm sorry. So if your child is doing well and if they've got the phonics down and the decoding down, and she's got the CVCs, if she's got it, go to digraphs. As soon as they've got those CVC words and they're doing them easily, yes, start adding in some blends, adding in digraphs, adding more sight words. Yeah, absolutely, that's fantastic. Great. great question. When is a kinder student expected to start reading on his own? So Rudolf Steiner, who started the Waldorf School, his theory was that children are not ready to start learning to read until their teeth start falling out and until they can reach over their head and grab the opposite ear. Okay, that developmentally their bodies, once their bodies started showing those signs, their brains were ready. So I think in Germany, they don't start teaching the kids to read until later than we do. I believe not until first grader, until they're 7. I would say, honestly, Ignacio, a kindergarten student is not necessarily expected to be able to read on their own at this point. Predictable books would be great. They can start to read those predictable pattern books where it's really about learning the pattern. Right? Or books with lots and lots of pictures where they can kind of figure out what's going on from the pictures. And then the focus should be on learning the sounds of the letters so that your child can start blending and you can move into the decodable books. Okay? If they can leave kindergarten reading CVC words and some of those decodable books, that's fantastic. How important is it to know how to properly spell in kindergarten? You know, ideally, we would like them to be able to spell correctly from the beginning. We'd like them to be able to put those sounds down, but we know that English is full of words that aren't spelled the way that they sound. So what's important is that they are putting down the sounds that they hear, right? That's where I would focus, making sure that they start to understand that there's spaces between the words and that they get as many of those sounds down as they can. At this point, we want them to have joy in writing. We want them to want to write. If we get too focused in on spelling correctly, sometimes it can block kids, and we don't want to do that. The spelling will come as their knowledge of the spelling patterns grows, as they're exposed to more words, it will come. Someone had a question about where you could watch this. It is on a YouTube channel. Is there a specific category for predictable books? Ignacio, what do you mean by category? Like, are you thinking about trying to find predictable books? So there are 2 different kind of leveling systems, and there's actually, I didn't go into this, but there's 2 different theories about reading acquisition, and one theory says kids go through discrete stages and that they need to learn to sound and blend, and that's the theory that I believe and have seen evidence of. And the other theory says all kids, everyone does the same thing, and good readers, bad readers, they learn to read from context, using context. And so books that are leveled A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you might have seen that when you've looked at books, that's more that system, the idea that, so those books go based on how many words are on the page and how many sentences there are, and they're not leveled by phonics patterns necessarily. So you can find a book that's level A or level B or level C that might have some words that your child doesn't know how to decode yet. So the good thing about those kind of A and B books is that they do tend to be predictable. If you look at the Scholastic Book Order, if you're doing any of the Scholastic Book Orders, they do have books available that are predictable. They're not necessarily called predictable, but a level A or a level B book would be a predictable reader. And again, if you want, I'm happy to put together a book bag for you of predictable books that you can take home. I have a lot of them at school. I will try to highlight them in the Scholastic Book Order. I hope that answered that. Okay. Anything else? All right, so it looks like we have come to the end of our time. Thank you so much again. Thank you for participating and for caring about your child's reading. I have enjoyed doing this, even though it has not been the same not seeing you and getting to interact with you. I hope that at some point you'll come up and introduce yourself to me when we're all back at